Hey everyone, I'm Katlin, and you're listening to my rescore to the action role-playing game Gotham Knights. And today we're going to take a behind-the-scenes look at how I created the interactive music for the game. Let's dive in. In order to create this, I needed to use an interactive scoring technique known as branching. So what is branching? Branching is a type of horizontal resequencing technique that allows for music to go from one piece to the next without musical interruption. This gives the player a much more immersive gaming experience. Branching gives me, the composer, the ability to change tempos, or also known as the speed of the music, change the type of instruments I'm using, and even the key of the music, or the overall collection of music pitches. I can shift them higher or lower to make things more exciting. Branching typically works best for gameplay scenes that last about 30 seconds or longer, which is why I've chosen this technique for this particular game scene. So now that we know a little bit about branching, let me take you into the Wwise session so you can see how this gets put together. Let's take a look at our hierarchy here on the left. You'll see that there are a lot of folders, and within those folders we have even more nested into one another. We have our music switches. Underneath we have playlists. Within our playlists we have segments. Within our segments we have tracks. And finally, inside our tracks we have our music. In Wwise, if we go down here to our game switch transport control, we see that we have a game state group. Within that game state group, we have a whole bunch of our states, our combat state, our explore state, and our suspense state. Let's go ahead and go to the suspense because that's what starts us off from the very beginning. All right, so as you see, we have this playlist in here. Of course, in order for us to build this playlist, we have to have our segments, and of course, we have to have our music inside our segments. So because we have these segments created, we will simply be able to drag and drop in order to create a playlist. It's very similar to your Spotify music. I'm going to go ahead and delete that for now, but for demonstration purposes, that's how you would do it. You would just simply drag and drop, and it's kind of like, again, like Spotify, where you're shuffling and creating your playlist. Now, the reason why it says phrase 1A, phrase 1B, phrase 1C, and so on and so forth is because this is part of the branching technique. In order for me to create a seamless interactive music experience, we need to be able to cut up our music into these little phrases, right? And in order for us to do that, of course, we just simply write within phrases as composers. So after we've written out all our phrases and we've put them into Wwise and so on and so forth, and we've dragged and dropped and created this playlist, as you'll see, let me open up a track for you. We have a wave file in here. That's what we imported into Wwise here. And as you can see, we have all these little exit cue markers. This little red marker in particular is kind of important because we need to set that as our reverb tail. And the reason why this is important is because it allows each phrase to loop seamlessly into one another. And you'll see that in a moment once I start playing the actual music. So you can take a look at how that actually goes and transpires within the program. Like I said, we're going to go up here to the playlist, and I'm going to go ahead and let you take a listen to that. And as you'll see, you'll notice a little yellow arrow that's going to pop up, and it's going to go from one phrase, and it's going to go into the other phrase and into the other phrase. And you may see two of them at the same time. That's because our reverb tail is ending, which is why we had to set those little red markers within the track. So let's go ahead and see how that works so that you get an understanding of what goes on behind the scenes. And this is just for one specific state. So within our gameplay scene, we have 3 different states. Like I said, we have a combat, explore, and suspense. And those are each different states that I've written for this specific gameplay scene. So let's go ahead and take a look, going back to this suspense playlist. Let's go ahead and take a look to see how all of this just transitions into one another, so you can get an idea as to how it loops seamlessly. And by the way, if you did want to loop this a certain specific amount of times, you could go over here under the loop count and of course go 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. But I like to loop it infinitely so that we don't have to worry about any of that for now. But let's go ahead and take a listen and take a look at what this does. So as you can see, you saw that the yellow arrows are making this sound nice and seamlessly. So now that you've got an idea as to how this phrase little mechanism works here, where we're going from one phrase to another without interruption, let me show you what it sounds like when we're going from our suspense playlist into a different playlist, like our combat playlist. I believe the combat is after the suspense sequence, if I remember. So we can get a better idea as to how all of this works in the game. And actually, yeah, I might try to give you or show you the suspense playlist going into the combat, then going into the explore, going into our none state over here in our transport control, so you can get a better idea of what that feels like. All right, let me go ahead and get that set up for you by going to the game, the music game switch up here for organization purposes, and let's go ahead and play that, and let's see how all this works out and works together. So there's one more thing I haven't shown you just yet. Now that we've seen how the playlist and music game switch work, I want to show you the stingers that I have in this Wwise session. Now, I do have to preface that I used a different gameplay scene from the same game in order to write these stingers, so keep that in mind. But I do want to give you an idea as to how those can work in a gameplay scene. But before I do, let me give you a brief overview of what a musical stinger is. Simply put, a musical stinger is like a musical highlight for certain game events like opening a chest, getting a bonus, or anything on screen that the player should be aware of, like a notification or something like that. You'll see what I mean in a second. So let's go over here. As we've seen before, we have our game state group and we have various game states here. We actually have to play this game state group in order for us to listen to our triggers that we have over here. As you can see, I have 3 different stingers going on. I have a bonus stinger, a crime resolve stinger, and a side activity stinger here. So let me go to the top. I'm going to go ahead and choose one of the lower intensities just because I think it'll be easier to listen to and to hear the stinger a little bit better, although it does work with the combat state. But I do just want to show you something very easy, very low intensity, so everything can come across very clearly. Alright, so let me go ahead and choose our classic suspense because that's very low intensity here. And I'm going to go ahead and hit play. And as we're playing, I'm going to go ahead and go over here to this displays trigger. And I'm going to go ahead and hit all of these stingers at various times as the music is going. So you can take a listen to what these sound like and how they would more or less work in a game. So let me go ahead and do that right now. So again, I have my game state group already active. I'm going to hit play and then we're going to go to our triggers and I'm going to go ahead and play those. So I'm going to go ahead and stop it right there. As you can hear all those stingers coming out nice and clearly. Now, of course, these stingers are going to come out in this particular game. It comes out during a bonus stinger event. So anytime you gain bonus points or something like that in game, that's when the bonus stinger plays. When a crime is solved or resolved, that crime resolve stinger will play again. And then there's a side activity stinger that will play when you have side activities that notify you that say, hey, you have side activities you gotta do. So yeah, that's how stingers work. And again, you can go up here to the game states group and it doesn't only have to be in the suspense state. We can hear it during the explore state. And I'll show you that in just a minute. And I'll go ahead and stop it right there. So you get the idea that you can hear in any one of these combat, explore, suspense. The only one you can't hear the triggers in is when you're in the none state. I don't believe it will trigger. As you can see here, it will not. But in any of the actual game states like combat, explore, suspense, you will be able to hear that through Wwise and through the game engine as well. And of course, as you can see here, I have a singers tab. I believe it was set to the general settings as the default, but you can just hit the stingers tab, and then that is my trigger, my crime resolve stinger segment to play. That's a segment that gets played because we've triggered. And of course, our triggers are also within our events tab. As you can see, our stingers here for game events, and as well, we have our triggers set up in our game syncs tab, and everything should work in game provided that you have the assets. Now, unfortunately for me, I did not have the game assets to hook it into something like Unity or Unreal or something like that, but we work with what we've got, and that's okay. And as you can see, everything should ideally work. So now that I've given you a basic overall of the behind the scenes look into Wwise, all right, I'm going to go ahead and leave you with the entire gameplay of a scene that I originally scored, which is the scene that you may have seen at the very beginning of the video. And I will be playing these stingers. Again, keep in mind that I wrote these stingers to a different gameplay scene, but I will go ahead and trigger these stingers the best I can to the original video that I wrote to some of the events you may hear. One of the stingers may be out of place, or one of the stingers may not have a notification that pops up on screen during gameplay at all. But again, that's because I wrote these stingers for a completely different scene. I may even try to do a picture-in-picture of both scenes. We'll see if that will work, to see if the stingers could line up and make a little bit more sense that way, but we'll have to see. But hopefully it should all work out, and this will give you a general overview, general idea as to how things work. So anyways, I hope you found this video interesting, and thanks for watching. Enjoy.